What's going on, everyone? Watchmen. The question we always ask, what the hell is going on? Episode 6 for once. For once. Maybe not a ton of questions. It answered more than I think it asked. However, it still asked some questions and leads to bigger things that are at play here that, of course, we just have no idea what's actually going on.
Yeah, for the most part, this episode made me feel great because I followed everything that was going on the entire time. I was like, oh, I know what's happening. Oh, yeah, I know what's happening here, too.
Very straightforward. Like you said, a lot more answers and a lot more questions raised.
Definitely.
And Damon Lindelof, he released, well, he didn't, HBO did, but he does the part of the interview, released the second episode of the Watchmen podcast. So we have a little more insight into the show and what happened. He did it after the first 3, now he did it after the second set of 3 episodes. So we'll talk about some of the things that
3 more
he
after
said.
this left?
We do, there's only 3 left. So we'll talk about some of the things Lindelof cleared up and mentioned and set up for the next couple episodes and the end of this. Let's get into Easter eggs, though.
Yep.
Easter eggs, not a ton. Not a ton, but they're older Easter eggs, right? One of the first things off the bat is the Minutemen. We've had the Minutemen tease this whole time through the American Hero story, which is the show within a show. And it's worth noting, and Lindelof talked about this, that there was a comic within a comic of the original Watchmen, and that was the Minutemen. So the show within a show is just kind of his twist on what happens in the graphic novel.
It's another thing that like really shows how brilliant he was in adapting the source material for this show, like making the show inside of a show, making it play as big a role in it played. That was awesome. And even just the transition, I texted you when it went from Watchmen to Minutemen in that like bold font, whatever. That was really cool. I kind of marked out for that.
And the Minutemen all look cool too, right? All the uniforms and everything spot on for that time period. It looked really nice.
Yep. We also see some older characters that you may recognize if you're a fan of even just the movies in general, not just the graphic novel. We see Silk Spectre, and we see the comedian very much in the background. We'll get to we're not going to talk yet at what point we saw them, but in terms of Easter eggs, they were in the background of a shot in this episode, and it was kind of cool to see them because we hadn't seen Silk Spectre and the comedian at all in this series so far.
Yeah, we haven't gotten them yet, and I feel like they kind of obviously teased it by giving us Agent Blake and everything, and I think that was kind of implied that we were going to get more of a backstory there, but we didn't know where we were going to get it yet. So
hopefully it's a setup of what we wanted to see, what we talked about earlier, where it's eventually we get to see a new comedian, the next generation of comedian.
So a part of that whole thing, the Minutemen, we see Captain Metropolis, who we've seen before in the American Hero story, in the show within a show, but we also get him this episode, the real version of Captain Metropolis, which is a reference, obviously another character along with Hooded Justice, who we finally get answers on. We'll get more on that in a minute. We see them in real life, like who they really are, as well as the fact that Captain Metropolis, can you explain just a touch for those who may not know the graphic novel, or may not remember from the movie?
I can't.
But can you explain that he tried to set up the CRIMEBUSTERS, right, where it's Dr. Manhattan, Rorschach, comedian, and then Silk Spectre 2, Night Owl 2, right?
Yes.
So he had a hand in like characters that people really know, even if they only saw the movie.
Yeah, but I didn't remember much, and I even mid-episode like started looking up back to the comic, and I was looking that kind of stuff up. He gave me big vibes of the Homelander from The Boys. Like he had that creepy kind of glossed over look where he's supposed to be the Superman of this universe or whatever. I thought the actor that played him was really friggin' good.
Yep. He was, yeah.
For sure.
So that's like the one little tie to like both the movie and the
I didn't even remember that though. I feel like I'm sure the people that are huge fans of the graphic novel are like, bro, that was so obvious. I read it once before the movie came out, and I did not remember that at all. But it's a cool tie-in for sure.
And here we go from PETY. Remember, they give you extra content online. HBO does, and PETY, who works with Laurie Blake, released a little something on the death of Captain Metropolis and his will. We'll get to that towards the end of the episode, so we can shed more light on how he was involved with other characters that we know now, including Silk Spectre 2 as well, Laurie Blake. So
I love when you come prepared with all
I got
the
a lot of
newspaper
notes.
articles, the highlight. I feel like you're like our personal PETY.
We got it. We got it all highlighted. Listening to the Watchmen podcast, I highly suggest, because it gives you different insight even than what we talk about. And Lindelof mentioned, like, in the actual Watchmen graphic novel or in the initial comic run, like, they had extra little things that were outside of just the comic itself, whether it would be, I think he said, like a Playboy interview with Adrian Veidt, something like that. And so this is his version of that, to 21st century version. Action Comics gets a bit of a cameo.
Yeah.
Small little nod
right
there.
outside the newsstand, which is a very Watchmen thing as well, like newsstands, comics, and all that. And even he describes the story of Superman to it was Angela at that point, right?
Yeah.
And it's another tie-in. Like we had that Superman Clark Kent style.
Which, by the way, he mentioned in the pod. I know you listened. He said that was a very on the nose ref. He wasn't even like, oh no, I didn't know. He's like, yes, I meant to call her Lois Clark. Like that was a Superman reference. Yeah. So that confirmed. Again, this episode confirmed a lot of things. These aren't as much Easter eggs, but callbacks. The trust in the law, the movie, the first thing we see in the first episode, that kind of comes full circle here. And then they do reference one thing that I'm not going to touch on too much in the next like reaction to the episode section, but they reference the painting of a white horse in the American Hero story. So in the show within a show, these detectives are talking to Hooded Justice, and they're talking about Captain Metropolis having hid something in a safe behind a painting of a white horse. Now, we also know that there is a painting with a white horse in Judd Crawford's house in the second episode when Angela goes and does a little reconnaissance. So I don't know if that's the same painting, the same concept. It was a very brief mention, but something that kind of did call back that we saw it a few weeks ago. Yeah, so those are kind of all the Easter eggs. Again, it wasn't a ton of things.
That one, like you said, is more of like just another like tease for the larger picture of something.
Yeah. So a lot of the Easter eggs revolved around the Minutemen and Captain Metropolis, and that kind of launches us into the story. The episode. Well, let me just first say this: what do you think about the episode? Wild episode, mostly in black and white. The memories. So Angela takes all the nostalgia pills from Will Reeves, her grandfather, in the last episode.
Remember berries.
Yeah, and so all the memories she sees are in black and white, except for memories within the memories. There's like some Inception shit.
There was some crazy Inception shit going on.
So anything that was Will Reeves when he was older, when he was in New York as a cop, that was in black and white. But then his memories, in the memories of when he was a kid in Tulsa during the Tulsa massacre and all that, that was in color. So it was like, again, a very Inception-esque, like, it was cool. Memories within memories. Had a lot of Birdman vibes to it, too.
I was going to say that. With the jazz music, with the one-shots, I enjoyed this episode a lot
of long takes in this.
I loved it. But as I was watching it, I was just like, oh, Jeff Lowe is coming himself in this episode. It felt like it was made for you.
It was.
Like the doors on the street where you're like coming out of the doors.
The door in the middle of the street?
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. I was like, that's Birdman, that's La La Land, that is Jeff Lowe
so my alley.
To a T, yes.
I will say, it's my second favorite episode. I do think the Looking Glass episode is still my favorite.
The Looking Glass one is my favorite.
This is my favorite by far, by like a country mile. It's like a lot. I think it's the best shot.
It's understandable. I wouldn't like argue that if you said it.
It's the best shot episode by far.
Yep.
I think it's one of the best scripted episodes by far, and I think that they touch on a lot of stuff. And obviously, Watchmen's always been a political commentary within the comic, and I think that the way that they turned this and twisted it and managed to make this a very insightful commentary on race, which applies not only to like the 20s in Tulsa, and then also in this scenario in like 1938, and then also even today. I think that was extremely thoughtful. I think they mentioned it a little bit in the podcast with Lindelof, and it's very very nuanced, and that they do it very delicately by making sure every single voice is heard.
And he was worried about it too. He was like, we're very careful to not make this because like he's like, we talk very seriously about real life things too that actually happened.
Exactly.
Some, like the stuff from Tulsa. He's like, but also the fact that we have a giant squid.
Yes.
And you got to balance it out.
And it's interesting because this is sort of like a detour episode for the show. It seems like most shows will usually have one a season. It's a detour episode. Usually gets shit on by the fans.
Yeah,
you're thinking like The Fly.
Everyone usually hates it when you do something weird. Like even I think of Stranger Things season 2 when 11 ran away and she was with that like gang of people. I enjoyed that episode, but most people didn't. Most people were like, get back to the main story. This was not that at all. This was like a detour episode in the best way.
That's what I was going to say. Is that this is like a total departure from what we're used to in the series so far, is the way as far as how they shoot it and how they like work it all out. But at the same time, it's its own self-contained great episode. Like I mentioned before, all the long takes are absolutely incredible. The fight scenes going for like a 6-minute shot is absolutely insane to see in TV. That's something you see reserved in movies.
The style of fight scene was so unique. It was very almost gritty. A mix between it was almost Zack Snyder-y, but not really. It didn't go through the speed up slow-mo or anything like that, but it was very fucking violent and very in your face. It was super cool.
They start off this episode, and we'll kind of dive into the more deeper stuff. They start off the episode in the American Hero story, that show within a show I've now said a bunch of times, and they reveal Hooded Justice. It's a regular white man, right? Which is what you kind of expect from the show itself. But as we know, PETEY has been saying throughout this series a couple times that he's been talking on camera with Laurie Blake that the American Hero story is inaccurate.
It's The Last Samurai starring Tom Cruise.
Yes.
There's a lot of bullshit in there.
The Great Wall of China starring Mark Wahlberg,
starring
Matt Damon.
Yeah. So they mentioned that, and so right off the top, you see his face. You're like, okay, well, I know it's going to happen at this point.
Yeah.
And the reveal does come eventually. Just get it out of the way. Will Reeves confirmed is Hooded Justice,
which we thought. We at least predicted that, but the way they let everything unfold made it one of those things where there was like a big heel turn in wrestling this weekend. It was pretty predictable, but it was so well done, and everyone's like, that made up for it. Same thing in Watchmen.
Damon Lindelof said that most fans, because he says he doesn't have Twitter, he usually learns the day after. He said most fans picked up on this after the first episode. He thought it was going to take a little longer. It was the one thing that surprised him.
It's almost a good thing, though, that not every mystery of the show is the most out there, thing. I think it's good for the fans to have that almost like gratification of, hey, I nailed that one.
But see, like we all kind of thought it. Even for me, though, I usually am a very like pessimistic. I'm like, okay, they're going to do exactly what I thought. But even this show has had so many twists and turns.
Yeah.
Where like even I didn't really recognize that he was going to be Hooded Justice until they literally were trying to lynch him.
And the way they did it, the parallel with the Night Sister, the makeup, which we'll get into.
Yeah. Once they lynched him, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be Hooded Justice. This is actually right. But so it's so very well done.
And Lindelof is he's made me realize through the last 2 episodes especially, the mastermind of superhero origin stories that are unique and different, like the Looking Glass one and this one. Give this man the Lex Luthor movie if you're doing that.
Big time,
give it to Lindelof. I want him to pretty much do everything from now on.
These are kind of the quotes I pulled from the podcast that he said. He said 95% of all Easter eggs and stuff have been found. This is the one that kind of surprised me that people got right away because of the thing that he was wearing. Will Reeves kind of had
same color scheme.
He had the same color scheme as Hooded Justice, and obviously him by the tree, like it all kind of lined up. And also said that, to what you'd said, if people weren't able to get shit right away, it's like cheating.
Yeah.
So he really was trying to make sure people did get it. And we have an audience question later that kind of tackles how this will wrap up and if it will wrap up. And he's very adamant, it sounds like, and that he is, yes, he said, I love ambiguity, I love mystery, but he's not really trying to just fuck with people.
I think the terms that they used were, we want mystery over confusion, because confusion turns people off to the show, mystery keeps people intrigued.
That's true. Think about how much that guy has to deal with on a daily basis. Like, you never answered the questions you set up and lost.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's focused on making sure this one wraps up.
Exactly. So we go from that American Hero story thing into Angela ABAR in a jail cell with Laurie talking to her about the nostalgia pills, and this is where she drops into the black and white. Right? We now see her. She is interchanged. It's Will Reeves' younger self as a cop, becoming a cop, but you kind of see her sometimes, you kind of see him, just to remind you of what's going on.
And that was cool too, because it confused me at first, because I didn't know if she was controlling and changing the memories, but it's clear that she wasn't. She was just present for them. But even the shots where they would have a one shot of Will Reeves, go to a different character and come back. And it's Angela, that was so dope.
It reminded me sort of if you ever played like the Assassin's Creed games. It's very similar to that, those sort of flashbacks and the Animus and all that.
Absolutely.
Very similar.
I didn't even think of that, but yeah.
He says, Lindelof said, nostalgia, it's not good for everyone. When you think of nostalgia, you think of positive things, but for everyone, it's not. Nostalgia pills were outlawed because people became addicted to them. They just wanted to live in the past stuff that was great. And he mentioned something on the podcast, and so did the host. I do forget the host name.
Craig Mazin. Okay. The guy who created Chernobyl.
Okay. Oh, right. So he mentioned something very interesting too, is that we saw it in the last episode, completely different character. One of the characters that was in the meeting about the trauma of the squid is that genetic trauma is something that we see here, because he mentioned that he wasn't a part of the squid attack.
Yes.
He wasn't a part of 11-2, but his mother was. I believe his mother was father. That lives with him.
Exactly.
And we see that with Angela as well. So genetic trauma is that, yes, Will Reeves, he doesn't completely totally remember everything of the Tulsa stuff, right? Like, he was very young, but he also still carries the burden of his family as well. That's why his wife or his girlfriend says, like, you're always angry, right? And we see that with Angela as well. She's now living these things, so she has that genetic trauma and feels things from past generations.
Those little nuances are just fucking brilliant.
Picking up on the same job that her fucking grandfather did. She's doing the same thing, mass crime fighting.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It just becomes one of what he already did, even though she didn't know him at all.
Exactly.
She still had that trauma and still felt that.
And what a cool parallel for the, people use the term soft reboot. I don't think that's what this is at all. But there's a bit of a, soft reboot in universe of the Watchmen, of these maxed people.
Yeah.
And for them to make that so unique and not just like, oh yeah, she's his granddaughter, so she's taking up the mantle. Like, no, she didn't really do that on purpose. She didn't know.
But you think about genetic trauma as well with Lady Trieu.
Exactly,
We don't get a ton of it. We get a little Lady Trieu at the end, but she's going through that with her daughter as well. There seems to be something there with that. So genetic trauma seems to be a major, major player all season, but especially now as we go to the last few episodes. He becomes a cop. We see right off the bat there's some racial issues in New York and that he's definitely not accepted to be a cop. He makes an arrest early on, a guy named Fred, who seems to be kind of a...
It's the guy from Barry. It's I forget his name.
Oh, really?
Like,
I didn't know that. Okay.
Something Flesher.
I don't watch Barry. I need to get on
Barry's
that.
incredible. That's one of the best shows HBO's ever made. He's so funny.
We see that he arrests him. He brings him down to the police station. The guy doesn't give a shit. He's like, oh, yeah, really? You're going to get me arrested?
Which was so frustrating. The guy that played Fred, shout out to this guy, because he played it perfectly. The entire time I was like, what do you fucking mean he can't arrest him? You just watched him.
Watched him burn down a deli.
What they were trying to push, the struggles that Will was facing, I was like feeling on my couch because I was just like, how can you not arrest him? I don't understand.
They bring him to the police station. His whoever works, what do they call the cop that works the front counter?
Like the book. I don't know. I was gonna say bookie, but that's not right.
Definitely not the he's
not
the
bookie.
The doorman.
Like
they book you though, but they book you when you come in.
Ebony.
Yes, more or less. Yes.
So basically, like the front desk guy, he says like he's kind of pushing back on taking this guy in for an arrest, and then a couple other cops come over and take him with these, and they do a hand symbol, which I'm not going to do. It does like a hand symbol, which ends up being for the Cyclops, which is some sort of KKK, like Nazi type offshoot thing.
Another perfect name with them going with like the Grand Wizard and all that. Like for them to call this guy the Cyclops. Like,
so the Cyclops, like we see the hand symbol. We don't know what it is initially, but we see it's something. Then later on, Will Reeves is kind of walking around the street. These guys come, they force him into their car, and you think at the time they're going to lynch him. You think he's going to get hanged, and he doesn't. They let him down. They say, "Stop fucking with us. Like, don't basically mess with
like
people
place,
business."
essentially.
It was the cops that had just been seemingly nice to him. They made Fred apologize to him and all that. But yeah, that was an intense scene, especially the first person view of it all.
Yes, exactly.
Where you could see through the hood. That was some good
nuts.
shit.
And the song they had playing throughout, they got distorted as he was getting beat up. And
That was good shit.
It was very fucking intense, pretty emotional. And then when he gets dropped down, if you didn't know at that point he was hooded justice, it all kind of clicked. He has the noose around his neck. He has the stuff on his arms too, and you realize, and he had the hood over his head, the mask, and he puts it back on later on as he walks down an alley, and he sees people are being mugged.
He just has like aggression that he needs to
does.
get
And it's
out.
not because he wants to help those people. He just wants to beat the fuck out of these guys.
He just wants to beat the shit out of them, and he does, and he saves them, beats them up, and now there it is.
He rips the holes in the mask, which was a cool, like, even like when he just rips it, I was like, oh shit, here we go. This is the first time.
So he becomes hooded justice. We see is it his wife?
So that's the girl he finds in the beginning.
Yeah,
girlfriend.
But it's also, I believe, his wife.
Is it? I was reading recaps and they were calling him the girlfriend.
Do you remember when Captain Metropolis comes in? He's like, "Can you tell your wife to get in the other room?" And
you're
she's
right.
like, "She's like, oh, business," and then she sits down.
So his wife is there. His wife, you're right, is the kid early on in the first episode. Will Reeves, when he's a child, very small child, saves a baby. That ends up being who his wife is in this episode.
What a heartwarming story.
He tells her everything.
Yeah,
he tells her what happens. That he survived. He basically became a masked hero in the middle of the night. And they
cool mustache, very cool mustache.
They kind of get in on it together.
And she's ride or die.
Yeah, exactly.
And he tells the story of that movie, Trust in the Law, the movie he was watching when the Tulsa riots and the massacre happened, where there is a character, Bass Reeves, comes and like kind of unmasked. And that's his inspiration. And the big thing here is to how, like, the question, this is Damon Lindelof's question, is who is he? Who is Hooded Justice? It's like the one character you don't really know much about from Watchmen at all.
Totally, and he's the beginning of all of it. He's the first superhero in this universe.
So you have to wonder, like, how do they never find out? It turns out he paints his eyes so it appears under the hood that he is white.
Yes.
And that's because it...
Oh, what a chef's kiss.
Brilliant.
What a beautiful, beautiful parallel to the Night Sister.
Exactly.
Painting her eyes black.
Look at that. It just...
When he did that
comes
too,
full
it's just,
circle.
it explains the comic, it explains the show, why they got it wrong in the in-universe show, why he became a footnote in something that he should have been like
the star,
a massive thing in. Just everything about this, I was just like, oh my God, this is so well thought out. This is so well thought out.
So he does some crime fighting. He goes into he finds like the Cyclops. He finds like their lair,
back room,
which is a back room of a grocery store, which is actually kind of the inverse of what we saw in American Hero Story. In American Hero Story, he breaks through the window to get into the grocery store. This one, he breaks out of the window.
And when he does that, they do the Zack Snyder
comedian
being thrown through the window thing,
which is awesome.
So at that point, again, still fighting crime. We see him in the grocery store. That Fred guy is the guy heading the grocery store. He takes a shot at him. He jumps through the window. Which, by the way, notice what he falls into when he goes from the back room. He beats up all the KKK
guys,
and he falls into the grocery store. Falls into a thing of lettuce. Which lettuce has been kind of a thing with
I didn't notice
the Cavalry and the KKK. Yeah. So he's out the window, and now he's frozen. And now we see Angela. Now we see Angela looking at her husband, who's on the other side.
Shot,
kind of talking through the trip
fog
she's going through of the
trying to bring her out of it.
Exactly. Trying to talk her out of it by saying like, "Hey, this is a kid, or your husband. You have kids. Blah blah blah. Wake
still
up."
Keep an eye on that guy. He's up to something.
I'm with Robbie there.
Going on there, and he joins again. So Petey was right on all this in terms of it being wrong. Like a lot of it was wrong,
and he uncovers like a bigger conspiracy again, even in that tiny operation where they're brainwashing people with like.
The mesmerization.
Which is kind of the big thing, at the end there. But before that, he joins the Minutemen.
Oh, true. That is before
that. He joins the Minutemen. Captain Metropolis comes over. Captain Metropolis pretends he's not Captain Metropolis. He's like a spokesperson. He sees right away. He sees two things.
His wife sees it right away, I think, more than anything else. His wife sees right through that. It's June,
So he sees that, hey, you are Hooded Justice. Also can kind of tell, sexually speaking, there's something different there. He's bisexual or gay or bisexual. I don't know what the exact, what they exactly land on there. But they have a sexual relationship, which was true. At least the idea of it was true from the American Hero story, and I believe that's the case in the comics as well. Isn't there something in the comics where the comedian, because, and I'll get to this part because there's a reference in something that Laurie Blake says on the PDpedia, but doesn't the comedian threaten to out Hooded Justice as being gay at some point?
I think he does. And the comedian is obviously a friggin' dick of a
psychopath,
character. So I think in the comic, maybe it could have been interpreted either way. Maybe he's just being a dick. But now we have confirmation, and it just
Hooded
makes
Justice
that better.
famously breaks up or stops the rape of the comedian of Silk Spectre,
yes.
Which ends up being obviously Laurie's parents from that whole situation.
They say in the show too, within it, that Metropolis was cheating on him with like J. Edgar Hoover from the FBI, the director of the FBI at the time. Like that part, I think maybe true. Who knows?
We did that one, because at this point, what is true from that? Because there were some things that were true in American Hero Story, but a lot weren't. So he joins the Minutemen, and we think that they're allies. This is again where we see in the background the comedian and all that, and they're definitely not.
No.
He's being
used.
He's being used. Yes, 100%. They don't give a shit about him trying to fight the Cyclops. Him trying to fight the Nazi KKK.
No, don't fuck with that guy. Like don't do it.
Yeah, so he begins to get rage and anger over this. He sees his son.
It's the same thing that happened to him in the Force. It's like the parallel, and he's just losing his mind over it.
Exactly. So he sees his son starts to dress up. He gets kind of angry at his son, like, no, you can't be Hooded Justice. And his wife leaves him and says, don't come find us in Tulsa or whatever. Because they're going back to Tulsa. And that, again, light bulb in the head. Why did Angela not know about her grandfather? It seems as though it's because they separated.
She says the very specific term, like, pretend we don't exist. Like, as far as you're concerned, we don't exist.
Yes.
So that, again, there we go. That's another wrapping up of something. And then the big, final, really huge thing with Will Reeves, at least in terms of the flashback, is that he goes into an even bigger lair for...
Like a movie theater.
Yeah.
Is it? Excuse me.
Yes,
you're right.
The movie theater's before that.
Okay, I almost skipped over this. There's an incident in a movie theater where they're watching a movie, and there's that in the town or in this area. I forget what part of New York it is. It was basically propaganda to have black people turn against each other.
Yeah, it was like an epileptic flash that like forces these people to
kill each other. So he's like, that kind of clues him in. Again, that's why he says there's the grander conspiracy. I'm glad you mentioned that because I skipped over that. That's the grander conspiracy he's trying to bring up to the Minutemen that they don't want to look into. And then he finally does. He shoots and kills that Fred guy.
Yes.
Very
satisfying. The entire scene. I could just watch people beat up KKK members for hours.
He was just being an old racist. He was saying, I don't recognize you. And even though it's the same guy that tried to arrest him, he goes in as Hooded Justice into the warehouse. And
wait, was it even Hooded Justice? I think he just went in as a cop, right? Was he wearing a hood at the time?
He did. He put his hood on.
Over the cop uniform.
He did, but he was not full Hooded Justice. He was like Hooded Cop, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just starts shooting everyone, kills everyone.
Strangles the dickhead cop to death.
Yeah, strangles a dickhead.
It's funny, he ran out of ammo.
Yeah,
He's just like,
shit.
Shit.
Just like strangling him.
Another awesome action scene, kind of a one shot there.
So awesome.
And he sees that they're using this hypnosis type tech with flashing lights.
Strobe lights.
The book said mesmerization was it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's how they were able to use this propaganda film to have people turn against each other. So that's kind of a big clue there. Hypnosis, mesmerization, as you said, and also psychosis, psychiatric war almost, right? Which goes back to what the squid did when Adrian Veidt dropped the squid on New York.
It sent out those
psychic waves.
Yeah. Psychic waves, yeah. So maybe a bit of a tie in there. We see him burn down the warehouse, and he has one of the cameras.
Yep.
He has the tech, so he kept the
projector
tech.
thing.
And then it flashes all the way forward to when he captured Judd Crawford years later from the first episode, and he uses that psychosis tech. What are we calling it again?
The big flashlight that blinks.
What's the exact tech?
I don't know.
I'm gonna pull it up here from Laurie Blake. She was very helpful.
I want to call it the mesmerizer.
Mind control.
Cool.
Okay, so they're
Mind
calling
control?
it mind control tech. That's what the show is referring to it as. So
Not very creative, but we'll excuse that one.
So he has mind control
Broad term.
tech and some sort of flashlight, and he gets Judd to wheel him to the tree, and then talks to Judd a little back and forth. He says, "I know you have a clan robe in your closet," and it kind of goes back, and Lindelof talks about this in sorry, what's the other person's name on the podcast?
Oh, Craig Mazin, yeah.
Yeah, Mazin and Lindelof talk about the fact that, like, Senator Keane and Judd Crawford have the same idea. They're like, we're racist, we're bad guys, but we're not that bad.
We're not as bad as our predecessors. We're benevolent racists because we're trying to do the right thing.
I'm trying to help you people.
Yeah,
Don't you
exactly.
understand? And it's like, oh, you don't understand because
You
you're saying
clearly
you
don't
people.
get
Yeah,
it.
you think you're good. So he says he keeps it because that's his legacy, but
Yeah.
he is good. He's protecting them. I'm doing the right thing. And then the big kind of reveal of how Judd was hung was that he hung himself because Will Reeves uses that mind control tech to get. He goes, now go hang
And
yourself.
Will
right?
says, like, I know who you are, and does the Cyclops thing with symbol, which made me think throughout this, like, what is the connection now between Cyclops and Cavalry?
So let me bring all the way back with that Cyclops thing. I'm glad you end on that because we saw in the mall when they were in that abandoned mall and they were testing out all that stuff when Looking Glass went in there and they're testing out, like they're throwing the basketball through the portals and shit, the Adrian Veidt video, there was that thing we mentioned. There was
What's
on
that
an
symbol?
elevator,
You said it, yep.
Yeah, there was a triangle with a
Big
like
eye on
a
it,
Cyclops
yep.
symbol, which we've seen a little bit with Ozymandias as well. We've seen that before. So the Cyclops thing is kind of like the big, here's another huge puzzle piece. This is like, I think, one of the biggest puzzle pieces of it all, tying everything together. The Cyclops eye has so much tie-in.
Whatever that
what's
role
gonna play
is
out.
with the cavalry, with the KKK, that is a big role.
Huge.
Also, this whole thing, the way they linked that, the Cyclops thing to the portal thing, I have no idea how they're going to link this all up at the end. I have no idea how
I don't know
Adrian
either.
Veidt even has to do with
episodes
this,
to go,
but I believe that they're going to do it.
And then
I have faith.
The end of the, excuse me, and actually I will say, Lindelof, they mention they're still trying to figure out who Judd Crawford is. So the Judd Crawford thing isn't fully wrapped yet. It's not fully wrapped because we know a little bit about like his grandfather, and that's why he has the clan robe. But his story is not totally wrapped, even though again he's still very much dead. The episode ends with Angela ABAR. She is in Lady Trieu's like facility, and she has something hooked up to her, and she sees Lady Trieu, and that's kind of how it
And
wraps.
she's just like, hey, good morning.
So I want to note something here because I did a crop and zoom. The book Lady Trieu is reading at the end of that, I zoomed in on it. It's The Fountainhead from Ayn Rand. The Fountainhead, it's all about like free thinking against collectivism, which I'm not sure how that'll apply to this just yet, but it does end on the protagonist, who's an architect, being commissioned to build a skyscraper that'll be the world's biggest skyscraper and be a quote-unquote testament to mankind. So that's the ending of that book.
Wow, and we heard in a previous episode she's building some kind of
The world's like
the new
big
wonder,
fucking clock tower
the
thing,
wonder of the new world, whatever
Yep,
it is.
the first wonder of the new world.
Interesting, KenJac. Good poll. Good poll.
Yep. Okay, that is
you got yourself over there.
Yeah, a little PD
Yeah.
yourself. So that's how it wraps, and you're just like, how did she get there? So again, that was. Let's do the short recap of the long-winded explainer of this episode. I think we hit everything, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's the most self-contained episode there is,
sure.
and it still sets things up.
We see Will Reeves, who he is, why he does what he does. We see him become Hooded Justice. We see his connection to the Minutemen. We now know what the Cyclops are. That's a offshoot KKK like Nazi type thing, because there were some Nazi things.
A lot of
they talked
Nazi
about as
notices.
well, which ties into some symbolism we've seen already in the show. Again, we see him become Hooded Justice. We see why Angela may not know who he is. And the last thing, Angela now with Lady Trieu, and that sets up the next couple episodes. It's like straightforward, but also a lot at the
Dense.
same time.
It's a dense episode.
Yep,
yes.
for sure. Very dense. Let's get to some audience questions. This is from someone who works here at Barstool Sports. That's Donnie Does.
What's up, Donnie?
Donnie says, did Will Reeves have any proof that Chief Crawford was Cyclops other than kind of his assumptions?
I'm going with yes, just because he seems like the guy that, at least at this point in his life, thinks a lot of things through. Because even like the plot he has patched with Lady Trieu right now seems to be very complex.
And they skipped over a lot. Like, it kind of ended with...
like 1940 something, and it went straight to 2019. So.
Yeah, so there's a huge gap there on purpose, probably. But I would agree with that. I think, and also the way Judd talked too. Judd knows he knows. I think.
Yeah, he's
the
like,
way
you
he's
don't know
replying.
me.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like, you have no idea who I am, old man, or whatever.
I'm in agreement with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. At Diodez, I'm not saying that right. 21. You'll see it on the bottom. There's your shout. Diodes? Okay. Sure. Doesn't it seem like typical Lindelof project with unanswered questions? I'm not even going to answer this with my own words. I'm going to say what Damon Lindelof said in the Watchmen podcast. Episode 7 will answer the question that Lady Trieu and Angela are together. He's going to answer right off the bat in the next episode. What crash landed on the farm? Answering the finale. What is up with the clock? Answering the finale.
It's cool that he's like kind of flexing on people. He's like, no, I'll tell you when I'm revealing things.
He knows at this point people are like, all right, are you going to say anything? And he has this quote. He said, I kind of like being confused if at the end of the confusion is enlightenment. So the only conversation that's really going to matter is the one we're having after the last episode ends. Said the essential questions will be answered. There will be some ambiguity, which I like. Leave it open-ended.
Yep.
He said the essential stuff will be answered. He said also someone murdered the comedian in the first, in Watchmen, and you didn't know who. Where he said this one, I wanted to make it where someone murdered someone, but you did know who. Like you knew who did it. He goes, it kind of changed things up there. And obviously, original Watchmen was a sequel in itself to a tie-in comic within the comic, where this one is a sequel to a TV show, essentially, whether it's inaccurate or not, which appears to be so. So that's kind of his little explainer on the wrap-up and what to expect. So yes, we will get wraps on things, it sounds, unless he's super lying to us, which means fuck you at that
And
point.
as a huge,
I don't think he is,
I'm a huge Lost fan. Lost is one of my favorite shows of all time. I didn't watch it when it was live. I binged it years later, which I think made the ending better for me. I've said that forever. When you binge something, it's just, I don't know, you're more open to be like, all right, if that episode wasn't good, we'll move on to the next one.
You're not being blue-balled.
Exactly. It's not the one episode you get per week. I watched it. I love the ending. I love all that. I have complete and total faith that he does not want to make the same mistake a lot of people consider him had making the first time with Lost.
At DJ Clubber Lang says, is American history being used to control people's minds? So is the American Hero story, is that being used to control people's minds? I don't think so.
I could see
but
it.
That's an interesting theory.
So it'd be almost something like, do you remember in Incredibles 2, the device being like them flashing through the TV to mind control people, essentially? So maybe something like that, but I don't think so.
Maybe the big plan will happen through there.
Yeah.
But again,
I was going to say maybe it didn't happen yet, but they're planning on doing it through that show. Everyone watches the show in the universe. Like in the universe, it seems like it's
very popular,
huge.
Yeah.
Will Reeves and it's the second season of it too.
Yeah.
Will Reeves has the mind control tech. The KKK did. The Cyclops had it. Do they still have it? That's the other question.
True.
They may not because
they have portals and shit. I don't see why not.
Yeah. So maybe. That's tough to talk. That's a very interesting question because I didn't think about that one at all. And last audience question, at Logie J, do you think Lady Trieu is the comedian's daughter that survived the death of her mother when the comedian shot her in Vietnam? Oof. Here we go. Let's pull up some PD facts. I'll read what's in here. The Talk of Tulsa, Lady Trieu, fact or fiction? The question is, Lady Trieu's father was a comedian. It says, baby daddy drama is exactly the kind of sizzle this column loves, but our gut and our legal department tells us that this one is fiction.
Legal department, interesting.
The Trieu spokeswoman was mum on the question. Lady Trieu has no father. That's what they say.
She's fucking space baby, like Star Wars baby.
But she did volunteer this. Beyond that her mother did have one unforgettable encounter with Mr. Blake. In 1971, Mr. Blake and his battalion of Blazing Commandos passed through her village. Their uniquely warm demeanor made quite an impression on her. So they're denying it, but kind of in a quiet way, where they're leaving it open. So the idea
I'm shocked that they're even addressing it that much.
Yeah. So we'll see. Are Laurie Blake and Lady Trieu half sisters because of that?
I didn't even think of that. That would be an awesome payoff.
The comedian and Dan Dreiberg, Night Owl, definitely, and Dr. Manhattan, definitely, something's going to pop up with them.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah,
I think we're definitely going to get Dan at some point before
the owl in the cage, that whole thing. Like,
absolutely.
He's going to be in this thing.
Yeah, let's look ahead to the next episode, and I want to read a couple things that were again dropped on PD that might shed some fun light for folks if you haven't read them yet. They show more flashbacks for Angela. They show that we're going to see a flashback from Angela's own nostalgia with her grandmother, it would appear.
Yeah, they showed
Will Reeves' wife. Yeah.
June Older saying something. Actually, I think I wrote it down. She said, she does really look like you. I'm going to take you home now, honey.
Yeah, which that seemed to be, was that in color as
That
well?
So that part was in black and white, but then the last frame before they took Angela out and she wakes up in Lady Trieu's place is in color.
Seems to be, again, her own memory. So that's where it kind of breaks that. This is where he's getting deep, right?
He's starting to get deep with it.
It's visual clues.
Do you think we'll see what really happened during the White Knight during this episode? Being she's looking back at memories?
Probably.
Yeah.
I can see that. We see Lady Trieu's plan kind of comes into focus a little more. Where's Looking Glass?
Yeah.
Last we saw it looked like he's about to get fucking popped
I didn't even
off.
think about that.
Yeah. And then Ozymandias on trial.
Yeah, and he's wearing the whole gimmick.
The whole fit,
Which is amazing.
But here's a couple notes. I'm going to read these two things. This is from Laurie Blake. She sent out a memorandum. It's very funny, by the way, because she's like talking to Petey in it too. She said, "Yeah, Petey, I read your fucking memos." She says, "To this end, after you track down Gardner, and Gardner being Captain Metropolis, Gardner's paperwork, get over to Mirror Guy's house and bring him in."
Mirror Guy.
He flipped on Angela ABAR too fast, and given what I just heard, I can't rule out the little shit is cavalry. So now she's skeptical that why did he give them up so fast? We know why he gave up Angela so fast, because he had the meeting with Senator Keane. She also noted that Angela was talking while she was on the nostalgia trip, and she recorded everything. And that's how they now know about Will Reeves being Hooded Justice. She said, we did not know that Will Reeves was Hooded Justice.
Wow.
So now they do know. And she actually said, I thought Hooded Justice might have been my dad at one point. Oh wait, it's not funny. It's not funny at fucking all. She said funny story. She also said it's pretty fucking strange that of all people who could be responsible for offing Crawford, Judd Crawford, it would be the same guy who beat the shit out of my dad when he tried to rape my mom. Again, so it ties in there. And then said it's all about Reeves, currently at large somewhere in Tulsa. So he's at large. They don't know. She assumes, because we saw her mention in this episode, this past one, that she assumes that he's with Lady Trieu, that in possession of mind control tech that he used to get Crawford to hang himself, and said, best I can tell, Cyclops is yet another KKK spinoff, which Crawford was most certainly a member of. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This thing goes deep.
Really deep.
So Laurie Blake now wants to confront Crawford's widow and says that she can't shake that maybe she knew something, because it seemed like she didn't. Said, I guess it's possible she didn't know who and what her hubby was, but as someone who spent a decade fucking a guy dressed up like a giant owl, I'm not one to throw stones. And then lastly, only one quick note from Petey and his reveal in kind of like expose on Captain Metropolis, who would be Nelson Forrest Gardner is his full name. He said that his desire was for Mr. Reeves to be the sole beneficiary of his estate. I've spent countless hours criticizing American Hero Story for its historical inaccuracies, but it never occurred to me until this moment that the greatest historical inaccuracy of all might be America itself. So some good, again, kind of ancillary documents and content that you can read that will clue in. And anything that they've kind of brought up here that ends up being important, they do mention, but this is just kind of, people want a little extra nugget to look at.
Yeah, it's a fun like tease,
It's fun. There's a lot of stuff. And I don't know, what's your prediction for next episode? I guess he said that we figure out Laurie and Angela. Do you think, well, if you don't know.
I was going to say, who could possibly make a prediction for the next episode of this show?
I'll set you up then. Do we find out the very, if there even is one, the black and white line between who is good, who is bad in this? Because there's a very clear line of Keane, Crawford, Trieu, Reeves.
I don't think we'll figure it out yet. No. I think that'll be like a big bombshell finale type thing. I hope we get, like I said, an explanation for the White Knight. I hope we get an explanation for what the hell her husband is up to. Her husband is a shady character. I want to know more about him. I want to know more about Angela. I want to see Looking Glass, or at least find out if he got killed. So I guess those are my hopes.
I think there's like a micro and the meta scale of like kind of like the problems happening in the Watchmen universe, like because there's like the extraterrestrial bullshit between like Ozymandias and Dr. Manhattan and all that, and that's like massive in scale. And then you have smaller scale stuff like the Cavalry, which is like obviously a big conspiracy, but compared to like extraterrestrial stuff is really small.
Yeah.
I think we'll get a more wrap up on some of it. Like I think we'll see the connection and the like kind of the history of how Cyclops sort of turned its way into being Cavalry and like where they fall. I think, you know, we mentioned when we talked about Senator Keane, how he's himself, we think, is a kind of a middleman for someone else. Maybe Cyclops is like that actual like head of both him, Crawford, and the Cavalry.
Which is funny because we're doing this on Mandalorian too, and we just had an episode where we talked about how someone's a middleman as well. We don't know who the big guy is.
And you know, I've been getting all mixed up in my head because I did a podcast with Clem about the Mandalorian. We were talking about the clan of Mandalorians. Yeah. And I was like, what are they called? What are they called? The Cavalry? And Clem goes, yeah, with a K. And I was like, yeah.
No,
wait, no. That's not them.
Wrong show. Definitely wrong show.
Yeah.
And also, we do see in the tease to the next episode episode that Angela does walk in where she thinks Will Reeves is her grandfather, and she's shocked. And I was about to say, what would she be shocked at? And it just dawned on me that he does stand up.
Yep.
So she's probably shocked that he stand. I would
the
imagine.
old Linda McMahon.
Yeah.
Linda McMahon, man.
Which we're not going to put any
Not putting it
WWE
in.
clips in our video this week because our video got taken down.
Oh, really? Because of the Linda thing?
Yeah.
Oh, come on,
So
Linda.
if you enjoyed our video last week with the Linda McMahon clip, the WWE
Sorry.
reveal, I'm glad you got to enjoy
Blame
it.
WWE.
Damn.
Last thing though, OZYMANDIAS, Lindelof did shed a little light there. He noted that people realized that the candles were counting up. That's how we know there's a jump in time every time we see Ozymandias. He's like, there's other shit too.
My guy, Ozymandias.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Ozymandias.
He said there's other things that Ozymandias Adrian Veidt has too that are not just the candle. There's like he goes after the buffalo, and then one like he doesn't get the buffalo, but later on there's another episode where he has a buffalo skin on the floor. So there's other hints to it. He says like, I'm gonna write a play, and then the literal next
And
episode
he has the play, yeah.
So
Do you know what Craig Mazin kind of pointed out here that I didn't recognize? Is that the Game Master is one of the servants, like a clone of, like it's the guy servant, whatever his name was.
Really?
Not Crookshanks. What was the guy servant name?
I forget, but
I wanted to say Petey.
just
but I know it's
another
not
one of the
Petey.
clones.
Yeah, just another one of the clones. Apparently, the Game Master was one of those clones too, the male clone, but just like he had a mustache. And like I had no idea,
See,
but Mazin mentioned that, and I was like, I don't think that's even true.
I didn't think that was because it just didn't look like it.
It didn't look like him at all. But that Mazin said it
The
so
mask,
confidently,
he's got
I
the
was like, sure,
mustache.
yeah.
And then he did ask Lindelof the question in the podcast, like, what is the Save Me D? He's like, is it Dan Dreiberg? Is it Night Owl? Is it Dr. Manhattan? In the trailer for the show, we do see someone with a blue hand pick up a Dr. Manhattan mask in Tulsa. So I still think we do see Dr. Manhattan at some point. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
The only guy that he really ruled out was Night Owl. He said there wasn't going to be Night Owl in the show, if I do recall correctly. I would imagine we see Dr. Manhattan. And the key thing, I will say, if you listen to the pod, Lindelof kind of replied to everything except this. This is the Ozymandias Adrian Veidt thing is the only thing he didn't really give a direct answer on. And he just said, all I'll say is, think about the quote. I may be your master, but I'm not your maker. You have no purpose except to serve. And that Dr. Manhattan did want to create life in the novel. He really left that one way open. So I think that side of things is where it all is going to tie together. I'm thinking of like a giant circle. We kind of have the Cyclops side of things. Now we're going to get the Ozymandias, and we're going to tie together that whole, I guess, villain side.
Yeah, I hope
if you
so.
consider them the villains, because Will Reeves, I imagine now we're looking at as the protagonist on the either side of the coin for Angela.
Sure.
So if we consider them the villain, I think the other half of the circle here is figuring out Adrian Veidt and his connection to all of that. So that's it, though. I don't got anything else.
Oh no, that's exhausting.
It's about to get fucking insane.
I know,
now.
yeah. Everything's about to connect, and it's going to be mind-blowing. I can't wait to see
It's-
how they wrap everything up and connect everything.
It's going to be nuts. December 2nd, we'll do the recap of the 7th episode. Also, Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. Make sure to tune in. We're going to be talking Mandalorian Chapter 4. Very pumped for that. Maybe some more
Can't
reveals
wait.
on old Baby Yoda. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. You got to hit the bell icon, hit the thumbs up, hit the like button, subscribe to get all our videos here for KenJac and Robbie. I'm Jeff Lowe. We'll talk to you next time.